All right. We should be back. Let me pull it up. The trailer should be running. I want to thank the sponsors first. Don't say anything. I got to hype you. They don't know you're here yet. They're coming into the chat. Hold on. Let me just see. All right. Head over to the website, www.johnbartoloshow.com. Go check out a complete list of the sponsors there. I want to name a few of them now. Shout out to Sig's Hour. Go buy a Sig, people. Stop fucking around. Pulsar. Thermal imaging technology is coming down in price, guys. If you're going to hunt at night. It's better. Go look at the neighbors. Do whatever makes you happy. Right On Optics. Kenzie's Optics. Volquartsen Firearms. Shout out to Scott Volquartsen. Hey, Scott. And all the other sponsors are listed down below. Guys, go support the sponsors by supporting the channel. Support the channel by supporting the sponsors. However you want to slice it and dice it. Even if you don't have money to go buy something, tap thumbs up and subscribe and like. Love you guys. I want to thank Eric. He's been extra special lately, sharing all the links in the chat room. I can see them now. We got a special guest today, and he's already shared her link. I'm excited about this. We got Nevada's own Annie Black.
Hey, John. How are you?
How are you?
I'm doing great. Today's a great day.
Why?
I'm super excited to be here. This is awesome. I've never done this before.
Oh, wow. You've never been on the radio. I guess we could call this the radio. I guess we seem old if we say radio, right? Podcast.
Yeah. I
know.
I'm not that cool.
No, you are. You totally are. So let everybody know how the hell you got into politics, especially Nevada politics, which is increasingly weird. How the hell did you get into this, and what are you doing here?
It's kind of a strange story. So I was born on January 20th, 1981, which was Ronald Reagan's inauguration day. Woo-hoo. Yeah, super cool. And when I discovered that, I got super into politics. And very strange story, right? But spent all of high school nerding out about politics and working on campaigns, and ran for the first time in 2010.
God, you were like Reese Witherspoon in an election.
Yes. Yeah.
God.
What's that other show with the blonde lady? Everyone always says I'm like her. I can't think of the name.
Oh my God, I know what you mean, but I can't think of the name of it either. Keep going. I don't want to end the story.
So anyways, I got into my first campaign for the state legislature in 2010, and I got absolutely annihilated. I lost so bad. It was so bad. But I learned a lot, and 10 years later, I finally made it to the state legislature, and wow, it was not as cool as I thought it was going to be.
It's very interesting. Nevada politics, since I've moved here, is a very interesting place. And I don't listen. I love everybody in Nevada. I love you guys. I love the state. I'm not a Nevada person. I grew up in Boston. We actually have schools. I like it here, but I feel like here it's all about like who can have the biggest billboard, who can like have the craziest story. Like I look at some of these people and I'm like, only in Nevada, right? I guess you could say only in Nevada. It's interesting.
I grew up here. I was born and raised here. It seems like it's a state where a lot of people act like there's something they're not.
Yeah. But not as bad as LA.
Okay, right. Yeah.
Not as bad as LA.
We're getting there.
You're getting there. Nevada's an interesting place. And since I've lived here, like the lawyers advertise in a very interesting way. I've actually laughed about it with some lawyers that are from the East Coast that I'm friendly with here. You just look at the way everything is like, how can I be like the Strip? It's so weird like that. Like everybody wants to be like how can I be from the Strip? But like, I don't know. It's just so strange. But either way, you get in. You finally get in.
I finally got
You get in. And it's not all it's cracked up to be. Take me through what politics is like today and how difficult it is to truly serve, especially in a great state like this. It's just difficult, right? It's like everybody sits on their side of the aisle, but take me through what that experience is like so everybody can understand it.
I got to the legislature and I was ready to kick some ass, if I can say that. And so it was really disappointing. I am a very idealistic person, and I have some really hardline stances on things. There are places where I will compromise, but there are absolutely places where I won't. And it was really frustrating to see how many people on both sides are political animals, I guess, for lack of a better way to say it. And it seems like you win and you're idealistic and you get up there. And then when people get there, they're so preoccupied with staying there that they'll risk anything that they value to keep the title. That's why
I've been a big advocate of term limits. And I was talking about this with Eli Crane the other day, who's running for Congress, coincidentally, in Arizona. You know, we're talking about this. I'm a big advocate of term limits, and I know that no elected official is going to vote on their own term limits. I wish the judiciary would step in at some point, whether or not they could, and create some level of term limits. I think it's preposterous that these people get elected and stay in for an extended period of time. If you truly want to serve, and let's say you do 8 years in a local assemblyman's position, or eventually maybe Congress, you can always go to Senate. You can make a career out of it if that's the end goal. But I think you should have to run to do that. And I think, the social media era, and this is something I want to get your take on, has given rise to the perpetual candidate. Now, you've been elected and actually voted in. There's people that just run forever. And it's going on a lot in the party. And I'll be honest, Annie, it scares me. It scares me a lot. Do you see a lot of that coming to be? And I think that could be one of our problems, is the perpetual candidate that's, always running. Are we running the right people all the time? It's a great question, It is a great question.
I think we don't do a good enough job building our farm team, and we keep recycling a lot of the same candidates. And unfortunately, people don't like primaries. Like Republican and Democrat primaries are for better candidates to challenge the person that's already in there in case they're better than that person. But there's almost this anti-primary, like we don't attack each other. I'm not saying throw each other under the bus, but run on your merits and elect the best person out of the primary. That's what it's for. But it seems like we don't want to do that. We don't want to damage our candidates. So I think maybe that speaks more to the way which we campaign, which is like personal attacks, which have nothing to do with,
the problem with personal attacks always in a campaign, Annie, is if you don't know, then you don't know. And a lot of people will do what's called sling mud, right? They'll just throw something out there that maybe they heard secondary or tertiary. And the problem is, if you ever have to confront that person, it's very difficult, right? And if you're wrong, the penalty comes back to you almost 10x, and you get ostracized. And there's problems with that. And I've seen that a lot, especially in Nevada. You don't see it as much in Massachusetts or certain areas because they operate with a certain level of decorum in the elections, and you don't see a lot of that. Like it's very difficult. Here, they'll be like, I'm the best because of this. But I find more often than not, a lot of the candidates, they look for guidance. So like we got, a really rough situation with the governor's election coming up with Steve Sisolak, who's absolutely pure cancer. I don't see how he's electable. I don't see how he gets in. But, for the most part, and I don't want to get into other candidates because I think they all run on their own merits. I think there's a lot of people vying for those positions, but I want to say Nevada hasn't matured to the point where you're seeing quality candidates like yourself rise to the table, because we've talked. I like where you stand on a lot of the issues. I like some of the things that you brought up. And the best part about you that I found that made me drawn to you to have you on is you're open to listening, which is so rare today, Annie. It's incredibly rare. Where does that come from? And why are you so open arms, like saying, come on, let's sit down, let's talk about it? Because not all politicians are like that.
Honestly, I am super critical on myself. I try to be the best that I can be. And I know that I don't know everything. Maybe that leads to that. And it is, everybody wants to be right. But you're not always right. You don't always know everything. And I know, hey, if you want somebody that's going to go fight like hell for you at the legislature or the Congress or wherever it's an elected position to be, that I'm your girl.
Yeah.
But if you want to talk about guns and like real actual hardcore issues on that, you're the guy. And I know that. And I recognize who the experts are and what my lane is.
And it's great to see, because you want to have meaningful conversations, which I feel is important. It's lost today. How do we get that back? That's the key. Does it start with just electing folks like yourself? Is there conversations that are being had at the floor level? Because I look at these school boards and I look at these situations, and not just particularly in Nevada, it's across the country. We saw it with Youngkin in the last cycle. It's one of these situations where the table issues are becoming really important. And to bridge the table issues, you have to have a stance of openness and willingness to kind of say, I want to sit down and I want to learn what the problem is. Because I feel like a lot of things get acted on without knowing what the problem is.
I think we're coming from a place always of trying to put someone into our box. When you talk to somebody that's not exactly aligning with you, you should, I think in my opinion, you should try to find a place where you can reach common ground with them. And if you, it's like everything, it's sales, it's friendship, it's all those things where you meet someone and you have to find a place where you can connect with them. And then maybe you can open them up to having another conversation where they like you, they feel like they are like you, instead of trying to come at them in this attack mode, be their friend.
First seek to understand, then seek to be understood. It's a good philosophy to live by. I like it. I think it's just rare, and I think it's something that's getting lost in translation in politics today is the willingness to sit down, have the conversation, take in the other people, and that's part of the reason why we've entered into the mask situation that we've entered into. It's the science is all over the place. The decisions are all over the place. It's being, totally dictated out of California as to what we should and shouldn't do. It's insane. And at what point do people stand up? I mean, we see in New York kids getting ripped out of restaurants because they're not wearing masks. It's crazy. It's just absolutely crazy. And we violated, I was talking about this with Eli Crane. We violated the Nuremberg codes. We violated everything that the country was built on. And I feel as if, we've reached a point where this next cycle of elections is going to be really critical, and it's going to drive what the narrative and what the political climate's going to look like for the next, probably, I would even say, for the next 6 years, especially this wave of elections.
1,000%. We say every election for the last 3 cycles, this is the most important election of our lifetime. This really is the most important election of our lifetime. We have an amazing opportunity with, unfortunately, the economy is not great. That gives us an opportunity to go out there and show what we're made of. That's our area of expertise, and we're the best at that. So
now the good thing is Nevada's growing. There's a lot of businesses that want to come here. There's a lot of activity in the area. I know of some very large manufacturers that are coming here. So it's very, very interesting in Nevada right now. We're seeing home prices rise up to what is an interesting level. It's not out of control. I'll tell everybody right now, go to Massachusetts, go buy a house there, go to Jersey. It's $1 million for a shack, for a half-burnt shack. So Nevada still has it pretty good, and it still can leverage the weather, the climate, a lot of different things. That's what makes Nevada unique in so many ways, and properly positioned with a football team, and they just got a former Patriots head coach, which is huge. Me being a New Englander, I'm okay with that. But I think it's a burgeoning area, and I think that there's a lot of hope. So it has to be exciting for you to kind of have that in the palm of your hand and have that as an elected official, as someone that can dangle that, because I think tourism obviously is a huge component here in getting people to come here. How do we fix the mask thing, and how does Nevada begin to move forward, and what does that look like?
We just have to stop wearing them. I stopped wearing one a long time ago. I didn't wear one in the legislature, and I was actually censured for it. We just have to stop playing this stupid game. We just saw Newsom was at a football game with no mask on. AOC was in Florida with no mask on.
With magic.
If masks work in the state you're from, but you go somewhere else and you're not wearing one, that's BS.
Oh, it's unbelievable. It really is. The whole mask thing is unbelievable. Just let people have the choice. Let's not violate HIPAA for everybody for the rest of our life. Let's draw our line. But I think the line will be drawn in these midterm elections, and that's what I think is going to make them so critical. Now, you're running. Mm-hmm. What for?
I am running for Congress in Congressional District 4.
Who's your competition?
Liberal, rubber-stamping, Biden-Pelosi Democrat, Stephen Horsford.
Oh.
Was that a good description?
That's great. We got to get you in. And the question is, how? Right? We got to get you in. We got to get people out to vote. If you're in Nevada and you're listening to this, go follow Annie Black. Go check her out. I wanted to ask you this. Why do Nevada politicians place such a low emphasis on social media? That's always been something that's very curious to me. Considering that Trump laid down the playbook originally in 16, and it was very social media based, very social media heavy, and he ran his campaign essentially on social media in so many ways. Why in Nevada is it such like a back burner issue? Is it a money thing? Is it what is it that drives the candidates here? Is it just the issues and you want to make it about the issues? Because I can get with that if that's the case, but I feel like social media is such a lower emphasis thing here still.
I think it's a matter of, I don't want to get too into the weeds, but the people that run campaigns, people that run campaigns have a specific style and a specific way that they've been doing things from the time Jesus was born until now, and they just don't want to change because, I don't know, whatever reason. No,
the problem is this country's dominated right now and run by the 50 and 60 somethings that just, if you try to talk to them about the metaverse or TikTok or anything, it just goes way over their head and it totally glazes over them. But I want to figure out how to reach the candidates, because I feel like the candidates that are going to be in your cycles of elections, that's where they're going to be. And I love like how these orgs, whether it's the NRA or NSSF, they always like to say, you know, we're a grassroots organization. We want to be grassroots, but there's nobody in the grass. There's nobody there to talk to. And I'm trying to explain to these people, listen, everybody's going to streaming. Everybody's going to podcasting. You have to get into those spaces. We were talking about it a little offline. You have to build into those spaces. I mean, you can see guys like Ted Cruz embracing it. You can see guys like Matt Gaetz embracing it. It's just taken so long to filter down to the lower levels. But I think if a young candidate comes along like yourself that can really make a splash and has all those things pumping, whether it's a podcast, whether it's streaming, whether it's video, Tulsi Gabbard's done a good job doing that, using all her online avenues to build her candidacy and to build her name. And I think she's going to run again. She'll be an interesting candidate on the left when she runs. I think she's a great vice presidential candidate, to be quite honest, for the right. But it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out here in Nevada as this kind of all comes to fruition, because I think it's time for Nevada to make its own claim and stop being run by California.
I agree. And I think something that you're bringing up is that Republicans have relied mostly on older folks to get us to win elections. And we're going to have to start appealing to the younger generation. And liberals do a really good job of doing that. And we don't. And we need to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I try to explain to everybody, listen, the social media platforms are what we have, whichever one you choose. But make no mistake, as I explained it to Eli Crane the other day, these social media platforms, they're run by anarchists. They're not run by liberals. They're run by anarchists. Jack, who owns Twitter, doesn't even live in the United States. People crack me up with that. He lives in Costa Rica. So he doesn't give a shit. He could care less. He could care less if the United States burns. It's the same with Zuckerberg. People think for one second a billionaire gives a shit about being a United States citizen. He can get on a plane and go live anywhere and donate $1 billion to whatever country and probably increase its GDP more than anything they're exporting. So it doesn't make, a whole hell of a lot of sense when they try to drag these people before Congress. But I think, Annie, they need to put publishing laws in effect in social media, and that's the only way they're going to clean it up. They need to stop with these fact checkers and people who checks the fact checkers, and that's something that I think needs to be at the forefront of legislation in the next cycle. And if it's not, we're going to be in a lot of trouble, because if we don't put a stop to it or put a cork in it in some way, shape, or form, I absolutely believe that they need to put publishing laws in place from these organizations. How do you confront the problem with social media and the sequestering of different voices? Like, look at the Joe Rogan situation. It's going to get out of control. I mean, free speech is dead. How do we fix that?
Shows like this, shows like Joe's, we all have to, innovate and find different ways. And I wish that we didn't have to rely on Facebook and Twitter. And unfortunately, we kind of do. I wish someone like Elon Musk, everyone's calling him lately to start his own social media. And I think Trump has talked about it, but we've not successfully done it. And we need to. We need a place for our own people to be able to go and be active on a social media platform that's not going to censor. And I think there was one that was out of Nevada. I'm trying to remember the name of it. And they started to pick up steam here, and then they were on someone else's servers and they got shut down. Yeah,
there was an attempt to a Parler. That was interesting. And of course, we saw Rumble come into play a little bit. But the problem was they all became echo chambers. They never caught on at a meaningful level. Interestingly enough, YouTube's been kind of cagey in so many ways. YouTube's towed the line in a lot of ways. Google's been an interesting one to watch, and I think they're adjusting because they know the legislative crackdown's coming, so they're kind of starting to play a little cagey. Same with Facebook. Facebook's really weird. They maintain a certain amount of plausible deniability, like where they're like, we'll put that COVID kind of stamp on it and we'll call it good. But who checks these fact checkers? And that's something that I know Ted Cruz has been hauling guys before Congress for. Ultimately, that has to be a pivotal issue in the coming elections behind the scenes. Otherwise, they're going to continue to sequester, silence, and mitigate any voices that offer any contrarian opinion to anything that they're marketing or anything that they're pushing. I think that puts you guys in an interesting place and a very powerful one. And it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. Is that something you'd push for, some level of legislative crackdown on social media?
That's a tough one, if I'm going to be honest. I mean, it is a private business, but if you want to operate as a public square or, it's a tough one. It's a tough one.
Publishing laws would be an interesting thing to start to slap on these orgs. I think that's an interesting path. I also am a big advocate for having everybody be verified. I don't want to see R2D2741 anymore feel like they can say anything, because what's happening is these foreign actors come in and amplify a lot of the negativity in the Discord in the conversations, and that causes, a really interesting shift in the narrative, and it allows the left to have kind of this clear runway to say whatever they want on these platforms. And I think if publishing laws were put into place where they could be held liable for things that they're sequestering, because I look at the Joe Rogan situation and I just see a guy who's offering the advice of what worked for him. And that's a conversation we would have at the coffee table 7 times. And it's interesting to see how they're panicking and freaking out, and people are pulling music from Spotify. I think it's ridiculous, and I think it's the death of free speech as we know it.
I don't know if I think it's the death of free speech as we know it. I do think we need to change our tactics. I mean, I, for one, have done an amazing, I think, job, and pat myself on the back for curating a really large email list. And I communicate constantly with my email people because I knew at any time we could get shut down on social media, and I needed a way to go directly to those people myself and communicate with them. So I think that we got a fight on our hands. There's no like joke about that. We gotta fight for our free speech. It's the most important thing we've got.
The next major thing, obviously, on everybody's plate's going to be the school boards and going to be the elections, and in securing the safety of the elections and making sure they run properly, which is a whole separate podcast in and of itself. But it's going to be interesting as these school board issues start to come to fruition. How do we clean up these school boards, and how do we get this right? Because I've had, guys like Brendan Burns in here. How do we get these school board issues cleaned up? Where would you begin, Annie?
We've got to run better candidates. This goes back to the beginning of the conversation. We've got to have a farm team. We've got to get people, and not just people that we get people that just show up that no one has ever heard of, and they want to run for office, and we support them. We don't vet them. We don't know who they are. It's politics. They tell us exactly what we want to hear. They get elected, and then they do whatever they want, and they throw us under the bus. Another big problem is unions. These, especially school board, they're going to have the union picked candidate is going to have all the money behind them. So you got to vet candidates, and people have to be able to pony up money. We've got to start giving our people money. Democrats outraise us in spades. Let go of some of your money and help these people out. We need to elect good people, and it takes money to do it. Now,
you're 100% right, and I couldn't explain it any better. Now, it's interesting as we move forward, looking at some of these things that politicians are doing, and I'm curious to see how you'll be different. You have guys like General Milley that are borderline violating the Logan Act and saying they'll tip off Chinese operatives in the CCP to if they're going to war. There's a lot of these weird modalities going on in politics right now. How do we stop it? It just seems like it's an out of control back alley deal based system that I've said it the other day to Eli Crane. I think this is the most bought and paid for administration in the history of the United States.
You brought up term limits earlier, and I'm totally with you on term limits, but I think the bigger problem that we have to recognize from all levels of government, I served on a city council to the state legislature, is those people that are in the legislature, that are in the Congress and the Senate, they're there through administration after administration. They're the people that made it damn near impossible for Trump to accomplish anything during the time that he was president. So we can put term limits on people all we want, but these people, the swamp or whatever you want to call them, they're there, and they have the institutional knowledge. They are able to manipulate candidates and to control a lot. And we don't have, how do we control that? Like, that's something that I think we also have to learn to deal with in addition to term limits is how do we get a handle on the people that are there that control a lot more than the people like me. I don't, that are not elected, that don't answer to anyone, that stay there for their whole careers. Yeah. How do we get that under control? Yeah,
it's a difficult one. I mean, the feds are riddled with these people, and they're dug in, and they're lifers, they're pension level guys in a meritocracy that they're almost impossible to remove. And they've been indoctrinated into the system. And to me, the reason I brought up the news thing earlier and why I think we're witnessing the death of free speech is we're in an interesting predicament. I've brought this up on this show many times. Rogan represents the most viewed thing right now in the news, and that's what's freaking the news out. That's what's freaking them out, is they don't have the control that they once had at the national news level. Now, Rachel Maddow is coming up on contract renewal at MSNBC, which is going to pose an interesting thing. Right. If she leaves and goes and starts her own platform, what if Tucker leaves Fox News and goes and starts his own thing? Now that causes a really interesting dilemma. And I just don't know how the national 24-hour news cycle can hold on to its grip of the national media and the narrative. And they're trying to so desperately with the government involved. That's going to be an interesting thing to see play out, Annie. And it's going to be interesting how the politicians respond to that. But they're literally at the bowels of media. I mean, you can go on Fox for 10 grand and talk about whatever you want. Literally at this point, we all know that. That's not like a fucking secret. You can go on any of these channels and buy a spot. So I find it very interesting to me. And I feel like they've bastardized so many of those platforms by saying, hey, you know, to their friend down the street, hey, you got a book deal, we'll put you on air. Hey, you got this, we'll put you on air. It doesn't matter what the issue is. It's just a commercial spot. So they've sold out all these avenues. Do they continue to sell out, and does Tucker leave and go and do something on his own, which would be far more lucrative probably than him staying at Fox? And does that splinter national media even more, creating this weird dichotomy of the institutions versus the people, which is going to be interesting to see play out?
Mainstream media is collapsing, right? We already know that, especially CNN, especially since Trump's gone. I think Tucker and maybe The Five or one of those shows are.
I like the Gutfeld show.
Yeah, okay, Gutfeld. I mean,
he's funny.
I mean, for all intents and purposes, there's no other successful talk people at this point. Well, I think Joe Rogan to me is something different, though. It's like, it's this weird thing that I can't wrap my head around lately, which is just, I think Joe Rogan's just a manifestation of this, which is you can't even have a differentiating idea. You can't even be allowed to think a different thought without these people being scared to death.
Terrifying.
Which I can't understand. They're so terrified that you don't think just like them, which in my mind, I can't wrap my head around. Why are you so threatened by that? That's what really scares me. Why do we all have to be exactly the same cookie cutter? It's terrifying. That is scary.
I agree with you. I think it's a super scary environment. There's a lot of issues on the table. It's going to be really interesting how it plays out. Now, you're a pro-gun person, which I like. I like that. Where does that come from? Were you born with it? Where does that originate in you? Did you go shooting it when you were like 10?
It's like that old commercials. Was it Maybelline or was she born with it?
Was she born with it?
Yeah, I was born with it. My family is really into, or my dad and my brother is really into guns. I've recently started acquiring some of my own.
Ooh.
Got my CCW. It might arrive here sometime before I die. It's been coming for a while, but yeah, I mean, I'm trying to get more proficient at defending myself, because as a politician, my dad's always scared that some wacko is going to come and try to, do something sinister to me, which I understand. It's a scary world out there. We all have to get proficient at protecting ourselves. It's just the time where we are in history. Now,
COVID, I feel like backfired in some regard to the left, because they didn't account for the amount of people that would run out and feel the same. And that's an interesting thing to see play out. What I don't like is the over-politicization of guns, and I've had that conversation with the NRA many times. I think it needs to not be as political of an issue. I'd love to see more Democrats carry guns. I'd love to see more Democrats become pro-gun Democrats. I think that's an interesting gray area that the left didn't account for in this cycle that happened, because that's a right people tend to not want to give back. And what I find very interesting in this is we didn't hear much about the ATF after Chipman fell through. And the reason for that is they don't know where all the gun owners are. And that poses an interesting issue in the next election cycle. It's kind of like on the right, you have a lot of pro-choice Republicans. Mm-hmm. It's an interesting thing that we're seeing play into it. And I think you're going to see the gun issue kind of subside a little bit, which is going to cause a little bit of a lull, because the ATF knows, hey, we have to know where these people are. We have to know what voters they are and what segment they fit in. And if we don't, we can't go after them because we're going to lose them all. Biden, I feel, is in an interesting predicament this cycle where he's nixed the pipeline. He's nixed almost all of his candidates into any meaningful position in the ATF. He's having a hard time even getting any of his packages through, which is going to put him in an interesting lame duck spot after this cycle, especially if they lose as many seats in the House. How do you see that playing out?
How do I see gun
legislation, the changeover in Congress, and how that's going to affect the overall greater good for gun legislation?
Well, if all goes according to plan, we're going to have the majority in the Senate and the House. And I think that's absolutely fantastic for gun legislation, so long as Republicans don't take over and crap the bed, right? Mm-hmm. Like we never miss an opportunity to miss an opportunity. I hate to say that, but we got to elect people, and then they've got to go and actually do what we need to do, because we're probably going to have a very finite window to get things done, and we need to get it done.
I think the last time when we went for the National Suppressor Act, I've said this to Representative Stube, it was a mistake, and I love Greg. I know he was one of the co-writers on that. I think we need to go for national reciprocity. I think national reciprocity has been something that's been on the table for a while. I think that's an issue that somebody needs to push and needs to discuss. I think suppressors are a fine thing to go after and to make, less invasive to go through that process, because it's about 9 months now to get a suppressor, 9 months to get a CCW in most states. I would just love to see that become a national reciprocity thing, where once you get the permit, because then I feel it's a lot easier, like a driver's license, Annie, to go after saying, hey, we want to, you want to buy a suppressor? We have a registered driver's license number, just like anything else. You can get a suppressor right there at the register. There's convenience in that. We already have NICs. We already have all those ways to record the serialized item. Then it's a lot easier to walk back some of the other pieces of legislation that have hindered that ability to make those processes a lot easier. I think doing away with the permit process and just going to constitutional carry is a dangerous thing, I've felt, at least. How do you sit on that, and where would you like to see it be?
You actually schooled me on this the first time I came to your studio, and I agree. You changed my mind, and you changed my heart and my mind, and that's what it's all about. I do think, though, you, and I could be off base here,
go ahead.
But we're focusing on processes and guns and what that means. But I think we really need to talk to people about what compelled them from the left and the right to buy guns during COVID is their safety. Like, let's not focus, I think from a messaging standpoint, we would be better off to focus on, you want to keep your daughter, your mother, your aunt, your son safe. We need to make sure that people can protect themselves, because they call the right to defend yourself and holding a gun the great equalizer, right? I mean, so I agree with what you're saying legislatively, but I think messaging, we've got to start talking about emotion, because that's what drives people to an issue, not, and I think there's a lot of people on the left that are afraid of guns. I don't know if that's right or that's wrong, but nobody can be afraid of defending themselves. Like, that's your God-given right to defend yourself and your family. And everybody should want to do that. There should be nobody in the world that's against that.
The problem is getting the NRA to embrace new market segments has always been a struggle. I have friends there. I love some of the guys there, but some of them just are those old dusty buckle and boot over 50 guys.
Hey, I like those guys.
Yeah, they literally want to send a mailer out. The problem isn't liking them. We all love them and have sat in rooms with them. The problem is getting them to understand that the next generation is the generation we need. It's the next generation. It's not necessarily what they hold near and dear to their heart. The gold jacket crew that wants to go to the auction and get a free safe and all that shit. The problem is I try to explain to those guys, that is a very small segment of the gun industry. The gun industry is so broad. I was just at SHOT Show, and I had the opportunity to walk around and meet some of the people. And I'm sorry, I say this all the time. We get the national conversation about guns wrong all the time. And it happens over and over and over again. And it's partly because the national messaging thinks, if I put a Navy SEAL on, that's representative of the gun industry. If I do a mag dump with an Instagram influencer like Taryn or Hickok 45, that's the gun industry. I'm placating the gun industry by doing that. That does nothing. And, I try to tell these guys, that does not make you a pro-gun person. How much have you donated? Have you stood on courthouse steps? Have you co-signed a piece of legislation? Have you ever tried to push the national narrative on any issue pertaining to guns, whether it's identifying red flag laws or pointing out some of these issues? I think constitutional carry is a noble thing to go for, Annie, and I think it's a good place to start. But I also think the permit process offers its advantages as well, because you're not going to get every state to go to constitutional carry. So where does that leave Utah, Florida, states that issue these multi-state permits, right? That we're so close, we're right there. Why can't we just get all the states to say, if you have a permit in another state, we're going to honor that permit 100%. And I'm trying to get Nevada to sign off on saying, hey, if you have a permit from another state, we will 100% honor that absolutely here. To me, that's the most pro-gun stance you could ever have, period.
And it makes sense. I don't stop at the border of California, Utah, Arizona, and have to get a new license. Like, that's just ridiculous.
It makes no sense.
It makes no sense. And I can think of no better time, unfortunately, no worse time in history, when people will want to and need to arm themselves. Defund the police. People are walking out of stores with shopping carts full of stuff because we've lowered the penalties so much. You know, mostly peaceful protesting. Like, this is the best time to talk to people about protecting themselves.
Oh, absolutely. The reason I love the permit is because you go take a class, like I said, from an instructor, and we all love our instructors, and we have the ability to keep that wheel spinning. Like, no one's going to sit here and say, don't fund the instructors anymore. So I think you start with that piece of paper, you go get the permit, and then if we can make it like a license and make the issuing like the DMV, how much easier then does it become to say, I want to get a machine gun permit. I want to get a this. We could start layering these things. I want to have an NFA permit for a year. And you can add it on just like any other, just like you'd add D or M or 1 or 2 to your driver's license. You can add all that stuff and do away with the stupidity of the $200 for the tax stamp in the cottage industry that is the NFA. That's how I felt.
And if you respect the weapon and you respect the responsibility that it takes in carrying it, you will understand that you need to be trained, and you would not be against that, right? I mean, this is a great responsibility. I own guns. I actively get trained. I've grown up around guns. My kids have grown up around guns, but you have to be trained. You have to learn how to use them. You can't just pick up a gun and even if you were in a situation where you had to defend yourself, if you're not training, you're not going to be ready to defend yourself in that situation. You think you might be, but you're not going to be, I don't think.
And I love the instructors. I want to see the wheel spin round. I want them to get paid to issue something. I want to see that wheel keep spinning, and that's what feeds our industry, and that's what people have to understand. That's what's important. I don't think, people fully get what they're giving up to what they're getting sometimes. And I don't think politicians sometimes do a great job of explaining that, unfortunately. They just kind of choose a hot button word like, hey, constitutional carry. Well, I think that's great. Put that in place. But what does the constitutional say in regards to carrying? Absolutely nothing.
You already busted my
I know. I know.
You converted me. I get it.
So, I see it as just like one of those table issues. Now, jumping to school boards and things like that, we were talking about earlier, I think it's pretty clear cut. Like you said, we have to have a good feeder system. We have to have good people. I hope that we can get a lot of those people to be interested in school boards, but many of these jobs are unpaid. Annie, they're unpaid jobs. So how do you get people to want to pursue an unpaid job, or do we make them paid? How does that work? What does that look like?
I think of it for me, and I don't by any way, shape, or form compare myself to anybody in the military, but I think that what I'm doing is my service to my country. I'm not a police officer. I'm not in the military. I don't even pretend to be close to that. But it is service, and you have to be willing to serve your country, and you have to want to serve your country because you love your country and you want better for it. And people have just got to start stepping up. When I went to the legislature, frankly, I lost money. It's a sacrifice. Nobody's saying it's, unfortunately, we're not like Pelosi and those guys when we get rich off this stuff. Like, we just don't. We do it for the right reasons. And you have to do it. We all have to step up and do it.
Yeah, I think it's a call to action, really, is what it is, and it's a calling, and I think you have to get the right people every cycle to kind of want to participate. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out, but I do believe the issues are going to be the table issues. Inflation, which is something we haven't touched on, that's getting out of control. Gas prices are getting out of control. I think all those things are going to come to a head, and I think given the fact that tourism is such a hot issue here in Nevada, we have to eventually stand up to California, and we have to stop playing the sister or nanny state to California. Oh, you want us to have masks in the casinos? Okay. We can't acquiesce, like you said. It's a matter of just standing up and saying, we're not going to do this anymore. And that's the end of that. Now, interestingly enough, another issue that comes up huge, where you have a big athletic constituency here, obviously. A lot of people are athletes or participate in UFC, boxing, whatever, what have you. Something that's come up that's really interesting, I brought it up to a lot of fighters, is the transgender thing, competing in athletics. I want to get your take on it, but one of the things that we've all agreed on, I've had lesbians on the show, I've had everybody on the show, we've talked about it, is create your own division and do whatever you want, right? How do we combat that, not just in athletics, Annie, but even in schools? What is this going to look like in a few years? Are we talking about, little girls going to the bathroom and guys can just walk in the bathroom? I mean, what does it become?
We know what it becomes, and we just have to say no. It's like I said earlier, there are places where you can compromise, and there are places where we absolutely cannot acquiesce. We cannot compromise. No, absolutely not. We have to stop trying to make friends with people and just say there are certain things that are right and there are certain things that are wrong. And if you can't deal with the negative blowback of that from some angry liberal, well, that's your problem, because we have to stand up and protect our kids. It's not fair that girls work to get, scholarships for sports and then they get beat by a man. It's effectively a man as a woman. I mean, these kids,
could be dangerous.
Right. Not only that, but I know kids, some in my own family, who their parents have been dragging them around to play soccer and club sports since they're toddlers. Some of these kids rely on this stuff to go to college and to get a better life. And it's just, like you said, it's not safe, it's not fair, and it's ridiculous. We've got to stop playing along with this insanity. The boys can be girls, and we can chest feed, and men on paternity leave. It's just insanity. Stop. We can't. It's like we're enabling crazy people to just be crazy.
I say just give them their own division. I'll watch. I'll get the pay-per-view. I said it the other day. I was talking about it with Eli Crane. I said, I'll watch it. I'm all for it. Start your own division. Like in the UFC, have the transgender division. I'm 100. I will buy that pay-per-view. If it was a 100% transgender card, I am in. Dana, do it now. I'm in.
Okay.
I would sign up for that.
I'll watch it, but I'll buy it to support the cause.
Absolutely. But I mean, if you truly believe in that, just have your own division, right? And then you can have women's records hold their stand, have men's records hold theirs, and there we go.
Right. I agree. I couldn't agree more.
And I feel like if at the end of the day, the bathroom situation, which is always like one of the fucking more interesting issues. Listen, if people want to put these I'll use air quotes, family bathrooms, put a family bathroom, but we can't have a situation where men are just walking in women's rooms and just being like, hey, I'm here. I think that's fucking crazy.
We got to stop.
Yeah.
Stop humoring insane people. That's really all it is, right?
Now, I agree with you. It's easier said than done, right?
No, it isn't. It's not. I mean, yes, it is, but we have to do it.
I agree. It's easier said than done. Now, going forward, it's going to be really interesting in Nevada. We have this election cycle coming up. A lot of seats are up for grabs. A lot of things are moving. A lot of things are happening. How do you see it playing out in Nevada specifically, and what would you like to see in Nevada?
As far as the election?
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
give me your predictions.
Oh, we're going to clean up. We're going to clean up. Yeah. So in my district, specifically Congressional District 4, the number one, which encompasses, mind you, it's almost all of North Las Vegas. The number one key Google search word, inflation. Mm-hmm. So if you have people that are Googling inflation because maybe they don't know what it means, or maybe they've never, it's kind of a buzzword, that's a big deal. This is an opportunity for us to just clean up, and we have to. And
I think they have to be concerned, because if this education piece keeps going off the table, I think a lot of people are going to explore homeschooling. I know if I had a child, I would. And that's something that has to scare the left, because I feel like they're alienating the teachers. They've done a great job alienating the cops, defunding the police, blah, blah, blah. I think they've done a great job alienating anybody in all authority that they can, which leads to this kind of nanny state situation where it's like, we have to go to them and beg for whatever we need. I'm actually progressive in the sense that I can be sold on universal basic income. So I do see the redeeming qualities of some of the things. If you're willing to do away with the social programs, if you're willing to do away with a lot of social programs, say just give people a check and they can do whatever the fuck they want with it. That's what I call capitalism. I feel like that's such a better way. Alaska does it successfully. I feel like if you did away with the billions and billions of dollars of free cell phones, free this, free that, and you just said, hey, if you make under 30 grand a year, we'll give you $11,000 or whatever it is a year, and you can go buy all the drugs and cigarettes or whatever the fuck you want, and you can do that. That's like true freedom. That's just going the whole other way. Now, interestingly enough, we probably won't see that, but I could be sold on it. It is interesting. So there are some good ideas, and I think, what was it, the presidential candidate came up with that, the Asian guy, what's his face? Yan or whatever. Yeah. I thought that was an interesting Yang. I thought that was an interesting conversation, though, that he brought up. And revamping some of those social programs is something that's interesting to me. But we're seeing right now a completely out of control social structure where we're seeing people get bussed from the border all around the country, everywhere. Is Nevada doing anything to protect that from happening, from busloads of people just being dropped off here?
No, absolutely not. Like you said, we have Newsom's twin brother over here. running our state. So of course not. No.
He's a hot disaster.
He's something else.
Yeah. He blocked me. I'm blocked. I'm actually blocked. Yeah, believe it or not. I tagged him in like one thing, and I think he took it personal. And I think he took that personal. But I see it as this. I think Nevada needs to blossom out of being a nanny state to California, and I think it's time for Nevada to grow up and have strong elected officials and strong people in the right seats that can step up and say Nevada is going to be its own state. And we're not going to acquiesce to other states' bullshit. And I think that's something that's a call to arms for you. And I think it's something that you embrace and understand. And I think we have to get back to a place of common sense legislation. And I think that's something that's going to come in. I think the midterms are going to dictate that. And hopefully you're a huge lightning rod for that. And I think that you will be.
I appreciate that. Yeah. We need people that are going to go to any elected office and know that they have to make every decision based on that it could be their last, their only, right? Everything you do while you're there could be your last opportunity to be there. So do what's right. Don't do what you think is going to get you back there. That's not a right place to govern from. Yeah. I don't think.
And I think Vegas needs to take a long look at the mayor position and stop treating it like we're going to elect the person that's just going to be like kind of like a figurehead, I mean, God bless Carolyn Goodman. I mean, she's 1,000, but it's time to move on. Let's get somebody credible in that position that can actually lead the city and clean up the homeless situation and understand that. Nevada, stop electing people just because they have a name. Start bringing someone in that actually has ideas and isn't going to go on national media and say Nevada's a petri dish. Let's just try anything here. You sound like a lunatic. Please don't elect that person again. Let's bring someone in that actually knows what the fuck they're doing. That's the stuff that turns it into clown shoes in Nevada, and that's where it gets eek. Now, I don't want you to comment on it. You may like the person, not like the person. I don't care. Maybe they're a heritage person that just is going to get elected every year, and that's the way it is, just because of who their husband was. But that shit needs to stop, and that's what turns this into a fucking a bottle-fed state and causes us to be the joke at the national level. And that's what needs to stop. I have hope for it, as long as we can get people like you in. Now, are there any other candidates you love and support and want to see come in? Or are you staying quiet during the primaries till everybody comes out of it?
I'm just running my own race. I have enough on my plate to worry about without looking at other people's races. So I think we let the voters decide. That's how Republicans do it. So Republicans come out in all the races and shine, show us your best stuff. And the voters will make the best choice, and then whoever that is, we will support them in the general. You got a fundraising page? I do. It's Annie for Nevada, Annie FOR or the number 4 Nevada.com. Yeah, we just shared it. Eric, keep sharing that link. We'll put the link down below. Anybody who's in the chat, if you can donate $5, donate $5. If you donate $10, donate $10. If you can head over to the page and or any of Annie's social media, if you don't have money, go ahead and support her. Go leave a good comment. Go share, like, subscribe, anything that she has, any platforms. I can see the guys in the chat sharing it. But I think that there's a little bit of people don't understand that these candidacies rely heavily on the local donor and how much that means. How important is it to you to have this grassroots donation project and have people donating at the local level as well as small amounts? It's got to be incredibly important to fuel the campaign. It's huge. And unfortunately, Republicans have not yet dialed it in. Democrats are really good at mobilizing those small dollar donors. All I would say to you is every dollar is important. So whether you're like $5, not going to make a difference, it absolutely makes a difference. So do it, even if it's just a little bit. It makes all the difference. You just don't even know. I mean, it's hugely important. We need to get better at emphasizing that to our people and letting them know that everything counts. And it's not just about the $10,000 people, although I love them. It's not just about them. No, the little guy needs to have a voice too. And can they message you or reach you in any way? Yeah, all my information's on the website. Always available. We try to be, as quick as possible. So yeah, reach out. I would love to have one-on-one conversations with anyone that has questions. I try to think of myself as a really accessible legislator. So I want to talk to people, and I don't want to insulate myself in a little bubble of people that just tell me what I want to hear. So I can tell everybody out there, she's one of us. So go give her a follow. Go give her some support. She's listening. She's open to the issue. She's willing to have the conversation. We got to do a fundraiser for her. Is there a local fundraiser for her? Are we doing something? You doing anything at 702 or anything like that? We've got 1, 2, 3, 4 plans. I'll get you the information.
Yeah. We got to do some local fundraisers for you. We got to get something going. I think you're a person people would like to meet, and I think you're a person people would benefit from having a conversation with. And I think anybody out there that's listening that's in the Nevada area that wants to participate in anything like that, go search out Annie's stuff. They're pretty responsive, and go check out all her links and everything in between. Now, if this works out.
When it works out?
When this works out.
Come on, get with me
When
here.
this works out, what's next for you? Do you want to go all the way? Are we talking Senate? What's next?
Let me win this one first.
Good
Let me
answer.
just, one at a time.
One at a time. Good answer. But you're a career. You want to be in this. You want to go to the next step.
It's my dad tells me all the time. He's like, if you worked at anything, this is my dad impression. If you worked at anything as hard as you work at politics, you'd be a millionaire.
Probably right.
And it's like, I wake up every morning. I hope that people all over the world find the thing that they love, that they feel called to do every day, that makes them wake up in the morning and not get paid to do it and love it so much that you do it all day long and you eat, sleep, and breathe it because, man, it's freaking awesome.
And she's willing to listen, which is rare in politics. Listen, I love having you. I appreciate it.
It was awesome.
Will you come back?
Yeah, we didn't do enough shots, but I'm just kidding.
Shots.
I don't do shots.
Shots. Hollerhead,
Can we get
right?
a nice glass of Cabernet?
Well, when's it appropriate to drink? Is it like before 11 or after 11? How does that work? Probably after 11, right? I don't know. What's the rules on that? I got to ask the people in the chat. Anytime's good. I don't know. There's rules on that, right?
You can always do a shot of Alien Tequila any time of day.
Shout out to Alien Tequila. Shout out to Alien. Shameless plug. And shout out to Hollerhead, too. I don't think we could do shots of either or because we'd probably fall through the table pretty quickly because they're both pretty strong booze. It's good booze, but go check them out. And listen, I appreciate having you. It means the world. I'd love to have you back in. I know we just touched on a lot of the issues, but if there's ever a time or ever anything that you're jonesing on, I'd love to put you in front of the audience. And I know everybody's going crazy in the chat. And I think it's rare. I will say this to everybody listening. It's rare to find somebody running for a seat that's so open to a conversation and having an open, honest dialogue. And I thank you for that.
Thanks for having me. It's really awesome. I wish I had a setup like this. I'm jealous. I want to grow up, be like you, you someday.
You
be
thought
John someday.
You thought I came in here and did this for free. That's what she thought. I think everybody in the audience knows that I don't do that for free. Shout out to Sig's Hour. Go buy a Sig.
Hey, I have one.
Exactly. See? So, listen, thank you. And I appreciate having you. Appreciate it. We're going to sign out. Listen, I want to thank all the sponsors. Shout out to Sig, Pulsar, Right On Optics, of course, Volkortson. Appreciate those guys. Go watch Scott Volkortson's podcast. Go check out his stuff. Go check out Brady from Right On Optics. Go check out his podcast. Guys, go buy something from the sponsors if you support the show, and go check out all Annie's stuff. All the links will be down below. I know Eric and the guys have been sharing it. Listen, it's a great debate. I love having it. I don't have many local politicians on. Everybody knows this, but I believe in this one. So go check her stuff out. Go donate a few bucks. Go support her by going over to her page and leaving some comments and some likes, and tap subscribe to any of her stuff. Appreciate you.
I appreciate you.
Oh, listen. Thank you. Hey, we're out.